There is a sickness in the modern mind. It is a feverish, desperate pathology that has infected the collective consciousness of the 21st century. We are told, from the moment we can understand language, that the path to victory is paved with blood, sweat, and unyielding exertion. We are indoctrinated with the belief that to win, one must strain. To succeed, one must suffer. We view life as a jagged mountain that must be climbed with raw, bleeding fingers, and we view the self as a weapon that must be forged in the fires of constant, grueling discipline. But what if this entire psychological framework is not only wrong, but fatal to the very success we chase? What if the harder you try, the faster you fail? Welcome to the Vault. Today, we are opening a file that has been gathering dust for 2.5 millennia, a file that contains a psychological weapon so potent and so counterintuitive that it dismantles the very foundation of Western ambition. We are looking at the lethal psychology of Taoism, and specifically the paradox of why winners, true winners, do not try. To understand this, we must first dissect the anatomy of human effort. In the clinical sense, what we call trying is often a manifestation of cognitive friction. It is the ego asserting dominance over the environment. When you try to fall asleep, you remain awake. When you try to be charming, you appear awkward. When you try to remember a name, it vanishes into the recesses of your hippocampus. This is known in psychology as the law of reversed effort, or the backwards law. It suggests that the conscious mind, when applied with excessive force to a delicate task, acts as a jamming signal. The signal-to-noise ratio becomes distorted. The anxiety of the desire for the result interferes with the execution of the action. The ancient Taoists, operating in the chaotic, blood-soaked era of the Warring States period in China, identified this psychological glitch long before modern neuroscience could map the prefrontal cortex. They looked at the world torn apart by warlords striving for power, striving for territory, striving for dominance, and they saw that this striving was the root of the chaos. It was the trying that was killing them. And from this observation emerged the concept of Wu Wei. Wu Wei is frequently mistranslated in the West. It is often lazily defined as doing nothing or idleness. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding. Wu Wei is not the absence of action. It is the absence of friction. It is the absence of the trying mind. It is action that arises so naturally, so spontaneously, and with such perfect alignment with the external world that the distinction between the actor and the action dissolves. It is the lethal efficiency of water. Consider the psychology of water. This is the central metaphor of Tao, and it serves as the perfect model for the psychology of the winner. Water is the softest substance, yet it penetrates the hardest rock. It does not try to flow, it simply yields to gravity. When it meets an obstacle, it does not argue, it does not stress, it does not formulate a 5-year plan to destroy the rock. It flows around it. It fills the void. By not trying to be anything other than what it is, it becomes irresistible. Now, apply this to the human psyche. The person who tries is operating from a place of lack. To try is to imply that you are not yet there. It is a declaration of insufficiency. When a man tries to be powerful, he broadcasts his insecurity. True power does not try. It simply is. This is the lethal nature of the Taoist mindset. It kills the ego's desperate need for validation. It creates a psychological vacuum that draws victory in rather than chasing it down. Let us look deeper into the neurobiology of the state. When a human being enters a state of high-stakes effort, the do-or-die mentality, the brain is flooded with cortisol and norepinephrine. The sympathetic nervous system engages the fight-or-flight response. While this is useful for running from a predator, it is disastrous for complex, high-performance tasks. Your vision narrows, literally, a phenomenon known as cognitive tunneling. Your creative lateral thinking shuts down. You become rigid, you become brittle. The Taoist master, or the modern individual who has unlocked this vault, operates in a state of hypofrontality. The chatter of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that worries, plans, and tries, goes quiet. This is what athletes call the zone, or flow. In this state, the archer does not try to hit the target. The archer, the bow, the arrow, and the target are a single, continuous loop of reality. The shot releases itself. If the archer tries to hit the bullseye, he is thinking about the prize. He is thinking about the glory. He is thinking about the failure. He has split his mind. One half is shooting, the other half is worrying. He has already missed. There is a story from the text of Chuangzi, the great Taoist sage, that perfectly illustrates the lethality of trying. It is the story of the empty boat. Imagine you are crossing a river in a small boat. Suddenly, you see another boat coming toward you, moving fast. It is on a collision course. You yell at the boat. You scream, "Turn aside, you fool." You get angry. Your blood pressure spikes. You are filled with the righteous fury of the ego. The boat crashes into you. You stand up to curse the pilot, only to realize the boat is empty. It drifted downstream, unmoored. Instantly, your anger evaporates. Why? The collision happened. The damage is the same. But the psychological context has shifted. There is no one to blame. There is no ego to fight. Chuangzi tells us, if a man can empty his own boat, he can cross the river of the world and no one will oppose him. The winner who doesn't try has emptied their boat. They have removed the heavy, clunky ego from the equation. When you oppose an empty boat, you look foolish. You cannot fight it. There is nothing to grapple with. This is why this psychology is lethal to one's enemies and competitors. How do you defeat a man who wants nothing? How do you intimidate a woman who is not trying to win, but is simply expressing her nature? You cannot leverage their fear, because they have abandoned the attachment to the outcome. By giving up the need to win, they become invincible. Let's analyze the mechanism of the uncarved block, or pu. In Taoist psychology, the ideal state of the mind is like a block of uncarved wood. It is simple, potential-filled, and undefined. Society, however, is a relentless carver. From childhood, we are whittled down. We are told to be successful, to be attractive, to be wealthy, to be dominant. We are carved into specific, rigid shapes. We become the banker, the athlete, the failure, the star. When we try, we are usually trying to maintain the shape of the carving. We are defending a definition of ourselves. This requires immense energy. It is exhausting to constantly prop up a persona. The winner who adopts the Taoist mindset stops the maintenance. They return to the uncarved block. They possess a flexibility that the rigid, carved ego lacks. In a crisis, the rigid structure snaps. The uncarved block can be anything. It can adapt. This adaptability is the hallmark of evolutionary survival, and it is the hallmark of psychological dominance. We must also confront the dark side of ambition. The modern world is fueled by a neurotic restlessness. We are terrified of silence. We are terrified of stillness. We equate stillness with death. But the Taoist knows that movement comes from stillness. Sound comes from silence. If your mind is constantly screaming with the effort of trying, you cannot hear the subtle signals of the environment. You miss the opportunities that whisper. Think of the predator in the wild. Does the tiger try to hunt? Does it pace around anxiously, worrying about its quarterly projections of gazelle consumption? No, it waits. It is perfectly still. It blends into the grass. Its entire existence is condensed into a single point of focus. When it strikes, the action is explosive, lethal, and instantaneous. It does not try to kill. It simply completes the cycle of its nature. The effort is minimal, the result is maximal. This is the efficiency of Wu Wei. Now, look at the loser psychology, which is often the psychology of the erratic striver. They are full of noise. They broadcast their intentions. They expend massive amounts of energy on things that do not matter. They fight currents that are too strong for them, and they ignore the currents that could carry them. They are exhausted before the race begins. They are defeated by their own internal friction. This brings us to the concept of day, or virtue, but not virtue in the moral Sunday school sense. In the dark psychology of the Tao, day translates more closely to potency or charismatic power. It is the power that accumulates in a person who is not leaking energy through anxiety and striving. When you stop trying to impress, your presence becomes heavier. People are drawn to you. When you stop trying to control every variable, you gain a panoramic awareness of the situation that the control freak misses. History is littered with generals and strategists who understood this. The great swordsman of feudal Japan, heavily influenced by Zen and Taoism, spoke of the moon on water. If the mind is agitated like turbulent water, it cannot reflect the moon. It cannot perceive reality accurately. If the mind is still, like a glassy lake, it reflects the moon perfectly. In a duel, the swordsman who tries to kill his opponent is focused on the future, the moment of impact. The swordsman who is still is focused on the now. He sees the twitch of the opponent's muscle before the blade even moves. He wins not because he is faster, but because he is present. He does not try to strike. The strike happens through him. This sounds mystical, but it is deeply clinical. It is the suppression of the analytical loop in favor of the sensory motor loop. It is trusting the body's intelligence over the ego's arrogance. However, we must address the terrifying aspect of the psychology. Why do we cling to trying? Why is it so hard to let go? Because trying gives us the illusion of control. If I worry, if I stress, if I grind my teeth, I feel like I am doing something. I feel like I am steering the ship. To stop trying is to admit that you are not the master of the ocean. You are just a passenger on a piece of wood. Surrendering that control feels like death. It is a form of suicide of the ego. This is why the title of this file refers to lethal psychology. To adopt this mindset, you must be willing to let the part of you that craves validation die.
You must become a ghost in your own life, acting, achieving, moving, but without the sticky residue of self-importance. Let's examine the modern corporate battlefield through this lens. The executive who is obsessed with micromanagement, who sends emails at 3 a.m., who constantly demands updates. This is a person who is drowning. They are thrashing in the water. They create turbulence that slows down the entire organization. Contrast this with the leader who practices the Taoist art of governing. Lao Tzu said, "Governing a large country is like cooking a small fish. Poke it too much and you ruin it." The effective leader does less but achieves more. They set the parameters, they remove obstacles, then they step back. They allow the system to self-organize. They trust the flow of the group intelligence. By not trying to force productivity, they unleash it. This is terrifying to the insecure manager because it renders them seemingly invisible, but the results speak for themselves. The best leader is the one whose people say when the task is done, "We did this ourselves." The leader's ego is absent, the victory is total.